Back in the early 2000s, the whole world was gripped by Star Wars fever unless you were a teenager from 1999 to 2005. You probably can't quite picture what it was like. We hadn't seen any new Star Wars movies since the 80s, back when we were just kids, and it felt like we were doomed to just grow up with only episodes 4, 5, and 6, those classic films, and that be all there was. When The Phantom Menace finally dropped, everyone was hyped, even if it wasn't the greatest film. We loved it anyway, even if it was a bit underwhelming. Then Attack of the Clones came out, and it was a slight improvement, making everything Star Wars related fill every aisle at Target and Best Buy. Action figures, lightsabers, toys, you name it. It was an all-time high to be a Star Wars fan during those years. On top of the merchandise, I grew up loving the video games too. My dad had a DOS gaming PC, and my brothers owned a PlayStation and an N64, so I was playing all the good stuff. I got into classics like TIE Fighter, X-Wing, Rogue Squadron, and my all-time favorite on my brother's N64, Shadows of the Empire. Let no one tell me Dash Rendar wasn't the coolest character ever. My excitement peaked when my brother told me about Star Wars Galaxies, coming soon, a massive multiplayer online game where I could create my own Star Wars avatar and explore the galaxy with friends. This was before World of Warcraft even hit the mainstream, so MMOs weren't the big deal they are now, and to my 19-year-old nerdy self, it was pure magic. I was just about starting college at the time. A couple of months after its release, I grabbed a copy of Star Wars Galaxies from my local GameStop, and let me tell you, I was instantly hooked. I won't bore you with all the nerdy details, but this was my kind of game, me true gaming love. I rolled 3 characters, but my favorite was Jen Tailize, a Twilight dancer who was surprisingly handy with a rifle. I would hunt down and take out Force witches and rankers, then dance for my squad to heal their wounds and buff us up. Yep, in SWG you could be anything: musician in a cantina band, creature handler, martial artist, hairdresser, you name it, and it was incredible. I played with some friends. My 2 high school buddies, my college roommate, her boyfriend, and a random German guy we met on a server. None of us knew him IRL, but we hung out and chatted a lot. We mainly used the in-game chat because voice chat options were limited then, and later we switched to Skype. While we played, we'd mostly stay in game chat, but if anyone was close enough, they could overhear us talking. I'll refer to my crew by their in-game names. There was me, Jen. Then my friends Ka and Jedi Ian, who was my roommate's boyfriend, and the German guy, who called himself Noodle Walker. One day, Sith Manson, Glitter Saber, Noodle Walker, and I were exploring some deep caves on Tatooine, just farming minerals, killing trash mobs, and working on a quest. Our chat was in-game, so anyone nearby could see what we were saying, and we didn't expect to bump into anyone deep in those caves. We were just casually chatting about college stuff when suddenly someone's name popped up in the chat, asking if we were talking about a certain class at our college. We responded that we were, and someone asked where we were in the game. He told us to keep heading down the cave. So we did. Eventually, we found this guy meditating in a small, open area. His in-game character looked pretty cool. None of us played as humans, so we thought it was interesting. The guy's name was Make Wookie, which made me chuckle at the time because it sounded childish. It turned out that Make Wookie was actually a student at the same college Glitter Manson, and I attended. We chatted with him for a bit. I remember he was kind of crazy about almost everything glitter, and I even joked about whether he might be just pretending to go to college to hang out with us, since he was very secretive about his real life and studies. He was a fun guy, very funny, and his high-level character made him worth being friends with just for that. Over the next few gaming sessions, we introduced him to Ka and Jedi Ian, and soon the 7 of us were having some awesome adventures in a galaxy far, far away most nights. Even though he'd never meet up face-to-face or fully tell us who he was, he kept saying he'd seen us on campus walking across the quad, hanging out at the student bar, or down by the lake. just enough to seem real but not too much. Though it was weird, it wasn't alarming, kept his distance, which was fine. After a few days, Manson asked if we'd ever actually introduced ourselves to Make Wookiee directly. When we thought about it, we realized we hadn't just told him what we studied, which dorm we lived in, that sort of thing. Never shared pictures or full names, nothing concrete. When Manson pointed that out, it felt a little off, especially because Glitter and I kept seeing him around. Say he'd seen us crossing the quad, at the lake, or at the student barriet, he wouldn't say much else. We just brushed it off but decided to try and get him to come out of his shell a bit, maybe meet up in real life. That plan was interrupted one day when I got back to our dorm after class and noticed a note pushed under the door. Glitter was busy with class or her boyfriend, so I quickly snatched it up, seeing my name written on it. It was folded in half, but when I unfolded it, there was just a single handwritten message. "You looked really good today. Maybe we should make Wookiee." Nothing overly dramatic, but it still sent a chill through me. It felt like someone was watching, like they were close, and the message was basically saying, "Hey, I'm here, and I'm watching you." I was open-minded about meeting someone online, but at that point, it was pretty creepy anyone could be behind that. Glitter, Manson, and the others all agreed it was weird. That night we confronted Make Wookiee in game, and he just laughed it off, claiming he was in the area and decided to surprise me. He was charming, and honestly, I found it hard to stay mad at him. I told him he should just introduce himself next time, and he said he'd think about it. I didn't acknowledge the innuendo, trying to keep things from getting awkward, but he flatly refused to introduce himself, and instead left me a gift in the common room, a cute little Ewok toy that talked when you pressed its tummy. It was adorable, and he included a note that said he was sorry. I told him it wasn't necessary, and I appreciated the gift, but again, he should just introduce himself so I could thank him properly. We kept playing for a few weeks without incident. During that time, I was actually dating someone, a guy we'll call Dave, and I was trying to see if things could get serious. One weekend, when the 7 of us were gaming together, I mentioned I'd have to cut our session short because I had plans with Dave. Make Wookiee asked if I was hanging out with my boyfriend, even though I hadn't told him about Dave. Glitter and Manson knew, but I kept it quiet in game, just worried he might get weird about it. When I asked how he knew about Dave, Make Wookiee replied that he'd seen us holding hands around campus, just casual sightings, nothing too detailed. I might have snapped at him a little, saying something like, "I don't really like being watched by someone I don't even know," just emphasizing he should introduce himself, but that set him off. His response was an explosion of curses, filled with horrible names, skank, ho, and worse. We were stunned. Nothing I had said or done warranted that reaction. Then suddenly he went offline. We had no idea what to say or do. We tried reaching out to him in-game, but he never responded. Later that night, we found out from in-game logs that he'd just been standing still in a spaceport, not moving. That same night, Glitter and I were asleep in our dorm. Then from nowhere, there was a loud crash somion through a rock through our window. When I scrambled over to see what happened, the person was gone, only leaving broken glass. I can't swear it was Make Wookiee, but if it wasn't, we just got lucky. The campus security cameras showed a figure dressed in black walking by and chucking the rock. No clear faces, no plates on the van, but it was enough to set us on edge. And then, a weird message from Make Wookiee appeared in game, simply haha, like he was laughing at our misfortune. That's when it started to feel unsettling. Knowing now that this guy might be watching us IRL made everything harder to enjoy. Glitter, Manson, and I all started wondering what if he'd been watching us all along, using Star Wars Galaxies as some kind of stalking tool. Manson was the first to suggest it. He pointed out that the day we met Make Wookiee in game, we'd been in the same college lecture, with only a few people around. We remembered that the last to leave the room was our TA, John. Could he have been there? Could that shy, quiet guy have been lurking in the background? The thought was disturbing, but at the time we just kept it to ourselves. We figured it was just a weird coincidence. We didn't tell security, especially since we didn't have any solid proof. Glitter and Manson swore he'd been in the same room, but there was no hard evidence. A few days later, McWookie was back online in the gammonering us again. So we messaged him directly, asking if he was John, the sociology TA. We expected denial or freakout, but he just spammed haha at us relentlessly. That night, someone slipped a note into my bag again. This time it was filled with nasty slurs, calling me names, accusing me of things I hadn't done, and saying Dave was a pervert sent again by McWookie. We asked around the dorm about who might have put it there. Nobody remembered seeing anyone suspicious. The rules about male visitors weren't strict, so guys hung around the dorm often. We couldn't confirm who left it, but we decided to keep an eye on the situation. We didn't tell security about John the TA. He seemed totally normal, maybe shy, maybe just quiet. The only thing that made us suspicious was that Glitter and Manson thought he'd been the only one in the room when we discussed the Tatooine quests. Still, that wasn't proof. So we basically dropped it and stopped playing SWG Altoge. The game was just too tainted for us. A few weeks later, I finally got on the high score list for another classic arcade game, 1942. Life went on, and I'd come into Bruce's a few times, noticing that some kids were hooked on Die Fast, the mysterious game everyone kept talking about. Rumors said it was cursed, and that players even died from playing it. I thought everyone was just joking or being superstitious, until I heard about a kid dying from a brain aneurysm after hitting level 5. Apparently, his brain just burst at the arcade, eyes bleeding. He dropped dead right there. That wasn't the only story. Some guy claimed he saw a trucker die after the game made him slip while trying to leave the arcade, hit his head, died on the spot. Others said a kid was telling his grandpa about the game, and then the old man suffered a stroke and died, blaming the game for it. Of course, it sounds unbelievable, but knowing what I do now about weird government experiments and secret projects, I can't entirely dismiss the idea that maybe some of these old arcade cabinets had more going on than we knew. Years later, the arcade cabinet from Bruce's disappeared. The place was turned into a chain restaurant, and the old machines were gone. If any of you out there have ever heard of Die Fast, reach out. I'd love to know if that cursed game really existed. From what I remember, that cabinet looked homemade, maybe a one-off project from some indie tech whiz. It wasn't a major commercial game, but in the 80s, all kinds of weird, forgotten relics appeared, some harmless, some deadly. Could they really be the last games you ever play? Who knows? Anyway, thanks for listening. Remember to hit that notification bell for future stories, because I upload new videos every Monday and Thursday at 9 p.m. Eastern. We do live streams on Sundays and Wednesdays too. If you've got your own story, send it in to my email at readsubmissions@gmail.com and maybe you'll be featured next. And for early access and bonus content, check out my Patreon or click that join button on the channel. Also, don't miss the Let's Read podcast, where all these stories and more are available everywhere you listen to podcasts. Links are in the description. Thanks again, friends. Stay safe out there, and remember, dodge the enemy tribe monkeys.